Lily, this isn't what you think.
You stole my life!
You've got some nerve. The woman's voice cut through the courthouse lobby like broken glass. Every head turned. My wife froze beside me. The adoption folder slipped from her hands and landed on the polished floor with a sharp slap. For a second, nobody moved. Then the teenage girl, standing 20 feet away, pointed directly at my wife. "No," she said. Her eyes shifted to me. "Not her." The entire lobby seemed to shrink. The girl swallowed. Her voice trembled, but she forced the words out. "Him." She pointed at me again. "He's the one I've been looking for." I stared at her. I had never seen her before. At least, that's what I thought. The judge's assistant stopped walking. Two attorneys near the elevators exchanged confused looks. My wife, Emily, grabbed my arm. "Daniel." Her voice was barely audible. "Do you know her?" I looked at the girl. Dark hair, thin frame, maybe 16, 17 at most. She looked terrified, but she wasn't leaving, and she wasn't looking away from me. "No," I said. "I don't." The girl laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. It sounded closer to heartbreak. "That's funny." Tears gathered in her eyes. "Because I've spent 4 years trying to find you." Silence fell over the lobby. The adoption papers sat forgotten on the floor between us. And for the first time that morning, I felt something cold crawl down my spine. Because there was something about her face. Something familiar. Something I couldn't place. Something that made my chest tighten for reasons I didn't understand. The girl took one step forward. "My name is Lily Carter." Her voice shook. "And you searched for me for years." My heart stopped, because suddenly, I remembered the name, and everything came crashing back. 3 years earlier, rain hammered against my windshield as I sat outside St. Mary's Children's Center. I hadn't gone inside. I couldn't. Not that day. Not after what I'd learned. The file sat on the passenger seat. A thin folder. A few photographs. Several reports. One missing child case. And a single name. Lily Carter. I remember gripping the steering wheel so hard my fingers hurt. The private investigator had spent nearly 8 months tracking leads. 8 months. Thousands of dollars. Hundreds of dead ends. All because of a promise I had made to a dying woman. A promise I failed to keep. I still remembered Sarah Carter's face. Pale. Exhausted. Fighting cancer that doctors already knew would win. She had called me 2 weeks before she died. I barely knew her. We had worked together years earlier. Nothing more. No romance. No hidden history. Just friendship. But when everyone else disappeared from her hospital room, I stayed. And she asked me for one thing. Find Lily. Her voice had barely been a whisper. They took her from me. I thought the medication was confusing her. Until she handed me documents. Until she showed me court records. Until I realized she wasn't imagining anything. Sarah had lost custody when she became seriously ill. Temporary guardianship had been granted to distant relatives. Then the relatives vanished. They moved, changed addresses, changed schools, changed everything. By the time Sarah recovered enough to fight, the legal trail had become a maze. Then the cancer returned, and time ran out. "Please." Those have been her last, meaningful words to me. Don't let her think I abandoned her. I promised. God help me. I promised. And I failed. Because despite everything I tried, Lily disappeared. The investigation ended. The leads dried up. Life moved forward. Or, at least it pretended to. Yet every few months, I'd search again. A new database. A new investigator. A new possibility. Always nothing. Until eventually Emily convinced me to stop. "You've done enough." I hated those words. Because I knew they weren't true. Enough would have been finding her. Enough would have been keeping my promise. Enough would have been telling a frightened little girl that her mother never stopped loving her. But I couldn't. And over time, failure became something I carried quietly. Like a stone in my pocket. Always there. Never visible. Never gone. Back in the courthouse lobby, my legs felt weak. Emily looked between us. "What is she talking about?" Lily laughed again. This time tears spilled down her cheeks. "You really don't recognize me." "I haven't seen you before," I said honestly. She nodded slowly. "Not in person." Then she reached in her backpack. The movement immediately drew attention. Security officers looked over. Lily ignored them. She pulled out a worn photograph. The edges were damaged. folded countless times, protected for years. Then she handed it to me. My hands trembled before I even looked, because somehow I already knew what I would see. The photograph showed a hospital room, a sick woman lying in bed, Sarah, and beside her stood a younger version of me, holding flowers, smiling awkwardly, trying to pretend everything would be okay. On the back of the photo were 6 handwritten words. If you're lost, find Daniel Brooks. My knees nearly gave out. I stared at the handwriting. Sarah's handwriting. No mistake. No possibility of confusion. Emily looked over my shoulder. Her eyes widened. What is this? Lily answered. My mother left it for me. Nobody spoke. The courthouse noise had disappeared. Or maybe I simply couldn't hear it anymore. My guardians found it after she died. Lily continued. They never gave it to me. Her jaw tightened. I found it hidden in a box 4 years ago. I couldn't breathe. For years. She'd been searching for 4 years. Because a note. Because of a promise. Because I had failed. I looked everywhere. Her voice cracked. I searched social media. Tears rolled down her face. I searched old company records. Another step forward. I searched hospitals. Another. I searched voter databases. Emily's grip on my arm loosened. The expression on her face had changed. Confusion. Concern. Fear. Not fear of Lily. Fear of what this meant. What happened? Emily asked quietly. Lily looked at her, then at me, then down at the adoption papers on the floor, and suddenly her expression changed. For the first time, genuine panic appeared. You're adopting someone? The question hit harder than expected. I nodded. Yes. She stared. For several seconds, she couldn't speak. Then she whispered, I almost missed you. The words shattered something inside me, because I realized exactly what she meant. If she had arrived 1 hour later, if she had searched 1 day longer, if she had chosen a different courthouse entrance, she might never have found me, and I might never have found her, the girl I'd spent years searching for, the promise I'd failed to keep, standing right in front of me. The hearing was postponed. Nobody objected, not even the judge. By afternoon, we sat inside a private conference room. Emily sat beside me. Lily sat across from us. A family counselor joined the meeting. The courthouse staff had initially assumed this was some strange misunderstanding. After reviewing the documents, they stopped assuming. The evidence was real. The photograph was real. The investigation records were real. And the story became more complicated with every passing minute. Tell me everything, I said. Lily stared at the table. For a while I thought she wouldn't answer. Then she began. The relatives who received custody had treated her less like family and more like responsibility. She wasn't beaten, wasn't starved, wasn't physically abused. But neglect leaves marks that don't appear in photographs. Birthdays forgotten, school events ignored, conversations avoided, love withheld. The 1,000 small wounds that teach a child they don't matter. They told me my mother chose not to come back. Her voice remained calm, too calm, the kind of calm that comes from repeating painful truths too many times. They said she didn't want me. Emily looked away. I clenched my jaw. They said she started a new life. Lily laughed softly, but they couldn't explain the photograph. The room stayed silent. That's when I knew they were lying. She looked at me. So I started searching. I wanted to apologize. The words sat in my throat. Heavy. Useless. Because apologies couldn't return lost years. Couldn't fix lonely birthdays. Couldn't erase the nights she spent wondering why nobody came. What happened to your guardians? I asked. Lily hesitated, then answered. They divorced. Something in her tone caught my attention. What aren't you saying? She met my eyes. For the first time all day, anger appeared. They blamed each other. The counselor shifted slightly. Lily continued. They spent years fighting over money. More silence. Then, and eventually I learned something. My stomach tightened. What? The girl reached in her backpack again. Another document emerged. Older. Official. Stamped. I took it. Read it. Then read it again. Because my brain refused to process what I was seeing. Emily leaned closer. What is it? I looked up at Lily. She looked exhausted. Broken. But determined. Where did you get this? Family storage unit. The answer came immediately. I lowered the paper. Every muscle in my body felt rigid. Because the document wasn't just a custody record. It was evidence. Evidence that Sarah had attempted to regain custody. Evidence that she had filed emergency motions. Evidence that she had never abandoned her daughter. Evidence that someone deliberately concealed from the court. And at the bottom sat two signatures. The guardians. They had lied. Repeatedly. Legally. Systematically. To keep Lily. Not because they loved her, but because attached to her guardianship was access to a trust fund established by Sarah's parents. Money. It was always money. Emily covered her mouth. Oh my God. Lily nodded. That was my reaction too. I stared at the document. Years of searching. Years of questions. Years of guilt. And suddenly the shape of the truth started appearing. Not complete. Not yet. But visible. Someone had stolen more than custody. They had stolen a childhood. And the consequences of that theft were still unfolding. The counselor quietly excused herself. Nobody stopped her. The room suddenly felt too small. Too crowded. Too full of things that should have been discovered years ago. Lily rubbed her eyes. Then asked the question I'd been dreading. Did you stop looking for me? The honesty of the question hurt. Because she deserved honesty back. Yes. Her face fell. I forced myself to continue. I never stopped caring. A painful smile appeared. Those aren't the same thing. No, they weren't. And I had no defense. The people who expect endless sacrifice are often the ones who value it least. For years, I had carried guilt over failing a promise. But sitting across from Lily, I realized something worse. I had allowed failure to become an excuse for surrender. I told myself there was nothing more I could do. I told myself the trail was cold. I told myself life had to move forward. Maybe all of that was true, but none of it changed the result. A child spent years alone, and I wasn't there. The silence stretched. Finally, I looked at the adoption papers still sitting on the conference table. Then at Lily. Then at Emily. And for the first time that day, I understood something important. This wasn't the end of an old promise. It was the beginning of a new responsibility. Because the truth hadn't finished revealing itself. Not even close. And somewhere beyond this courthouse sat two people who had built their lives on a lie. A lie that was finally beginning to crack. I met Lily's eyes. We're going to find out everything. She studied me carefully, as if deciding whether I was making another promise I couldn't keep. Then slowly she nodded. Outside the conference room, a man appeared at the end of the hallway. He stopped the moment he saw Lily through the glass. The color drained from his face. Lily turned, saw him, and immediately stood. Fear flashed across her expression. Real fear. Not uncertainty. Not anxiety. Fear. The man's hand tightened around his phone. Then he turned and walked away as fast as he could. Lily whispered two words. That's him. My pulse quickened. Who? Her face had gone pale. My guardian. And somehow, the way he fled told me he already knew the truth was coming. And he was terrified of what would happen when it arrived. I moved before I had time to think. The conference room door flew open. The hallway stretched ahead of me. The man Lily had identified was already halfway toward the elevators. Hey, my voice echoed through the corridor. He didn't stop, didn't even turn around. He simply walked faster. That told me everything. Innocent people don't run from teenage girls. Innocent people don't flee courthouses. Innocent people don't panic at the sight of a document they shouldn't know exists. By the time I reached the elevator lobby, the doors had already closed. The digital display dropped. 5, 4, 3, gone. I stood there breathing hard. Not because I expected to catch him. Because I suddenly understood something. For years, I had searched for Lily as if she were a missing person. But she hadn't been missing. She had been hidden. There was a difference. A huge difference. And hidden people always have someone doing the hiding. When I returned to the conference room, Lily was staring at the empty doorway. He always does that. I sat down. What do you mean? When things get difficult, he leaves. The statement sounded simple. Yet something inside it felt heavy, like a lifetime compressed into one sentence. Emily quietly slid a bottle of water toward Lily. The girl accepted it. Thank you. Her voice softened slightly. It was the first time she'd spoken to Emily without suspicion. I noticed it immediately. Emily noticed too. Not because either of them disliked each other. Because they were trying to understand their place in this unexpected situation. 6 hours earlier, Emily and I had walked into the courthouse preparing to become parents. Now a teenager from my past had appeared, carrying pieces of a story neither of us fully understood. Everything had shifted. Nothing felt stable anymore. "Can I ask something?" Emily said carefully. Lily nodded. "If you found evidence months ago, why come now?" The question lingered. Lily twisted the water bottle cap, unscrewed it, tightened it again. A nervous habit. I was afraid. Nobody spoke. She continued. "What if I found him and he didn't care?" Her eyes moved toward me. I kept thinking maybe it was better not to know. The word struck harder than any accusation, because she wasn't talking about me specifically. She was talking about abandonment, about disappointment, about hope becoming dangerous. A child who expects nothing can survive. A child who hopes and loses again. That's different. I understood that. More than I wanted to. The courthouse counselor arranged another room for us. Smaller, private, no interruptions, no curious staff. By evening, we had begun assembling timelines. Dates, addresses, legal filings, school records. Every piece mattered. Every piece filled another gap. And the more we discovered, the uglier the picture became. Sarah had not simply tried to regain custody. She had nearly succeeded. Twice. The first petition failed because documents mysteriously disappeared. The second failed because witnesses never appeared. The third was delayed long enough for her health to collapse. Then she died. Case closed. At least officially. Unofficially, something felt rotten. Deliberate. Calculated. I stared at the paperwork spread across the table. Lily watched me. "What are you thinking?" I answered honestly. "I'm thinking this doesn't look like incompetence." Emily slowly nodded. Neither did she. The missing records, the delayed hearings, the vanished witnesses. One coincidence is an accident. 10 coincidences become a pattern. Patterns have architects. And somewhere behind all this stood someone who benefited. Money, control, access to the trust. The motive practically screamed from the documents. Yet proving it would be another matter entirely. Around 8 o'clock, Lily's phone rang. She looked at the screen. Her expression immediately changed. Fear. Again. The same fear I'd seen in the hallway. "Who is it?" I asked. She swallowed. "Mark, her guardian." The room went quiet. The phone continued vibrating. Emily exchanged a glance with me. "Answer it," I said. Lily hesitated, then pressed accept. She activated speaker mode. The room filled with a man's voice. "Lily." Sharp. Controlled. Trying very hard not to sound angry. "Where are you?" Lily stared at the table. "Out." A pause. "With who?" Silence. The man's breathing became audible. Then, "Did you go to the courthouse?" No greeting. No concern. No asking if she was safe. Straight to the courthouse. Straight to the thing he feared. My jaw tightened. Lily said nothing. The silence answered for her. Mark exhaled. A long, frustrated breath. Then his voice changed. Softer. Manipulative. The tone of someone who had practiced it. "Lily, listen carefully." Emily's eyes narrowed. I noticed. So did Lily. "I know you're upset." Another pause. "But some things happened before you understood them." Classic. Not denial. Not explanation. Just enough ambiguity to create doubt. The tactic worked on children. On confused people. On those desperate for reassurance. Lily remained silent. Mark continued. "You don't know the whole story. There are always two sides." I nearly laughed. There it was. The universal language of guilty people. Not truth. Not facts. Just fog. Just confusion. Just enough uncertainty to keep accountability away. Then came the sentence that changed everything. "If Daniel Brooks is with you, leave immediately." The room froze. My name. He knew my name. The line remained silent. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Mark realized his mistake first. I could hear it. A tiny shift in breathing. A tiny pause. A tiny crack in control. Too late. Lily noticed. I noticed. Emily noticed. "How do you know his name?" Lily asked. Nothing. Absolute silence. Then, "Lily, come home." No answer. "Now." The line disconnected. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then Emily leaned forward. "He knows exactly who you are." "Yes." Lily stared at her phone. "He He always did. The words landed heavily. What do you mean? I asked. Lily looked exhausted, like she'd finally decided to stop protecting other people from uncomfortable truths. When I found a photograph 4 years ago, he took it. The room fell silent. He told me it was fake. A bitter smile appeared. I made copies first. Smart. Very smart. For the first time all day, I saw not just a survivor. I saw resilience. A quiet kind. The type built through years of neglect. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just stubborn. The ability to keep moving when nobody helps. He knew about the photograph. Yes. He knew about Sarah's note. Yes. My chest tightened. Then the answer became obvious. Of course he knew. How else could Lily remain hidden so effectively? How else could every lead disappear? How else could every trail go cold? Because someone knew what I was searching for. And someone kept moving the target. That night, Emily and I drove Lily to a hotel. Not because she wanted luxury. Because she refused to return home. And after everything we'd learned, I wasn't about to force her. The three of us sat inside the hotel cafe. Nobody was hungry. Nobody touched the food. Outside, rain tapped against the windows. The city lights blurred into streaks of gold. For a while, nobody spoke. Then Emily surprised me. What happens if we find proof? I looked at her. What kind of proof? The kind that changes everything. The question wasn't legal. It wasn't practical. It was personal. I understood immediately. Because finding proof would create consequences. Consequences for Mark. For his ex-wife. For Lily. For us. Especially for us. I looked down at my coffee. Cold. Untouched. The adoption hearing replayed in my mind. The child we planned to adopt. The future we'd imagined. The careful life Emily and I had spent years building. Then Lily's face appeared. A frightened teenager carrying a photograph. A promise. A question. Did you stop looking for me? The answer still hurt. Then we tell the truth, I said quietly. Emily studied me. Not judging. Not resisting. Simply understanding. One of the reasons I loved her. She never demanded easy answers. Only honest ones. Eventually she nodded. The truth, then. Near midnight, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Almost. Then I answered. Hello. A woman's voice emerged. Nervous. Older. I need to speak to Daniel Brooks. This is Daniel. A shaky breath. Then, my name is Karen Ellis. The name meant nothing to me. At first. Then she added, I used to work for attorney Robert Gaines. My heartbeat accelerated. Robert Gaines, the lawyer who handled Sarah's custody petitions. I remembered him immediately. He'd retired shortly after Sarah died. At the time, I hadn't thought much about it. Now every detail felt important. Karen continued. I saw your name in a courthouse report today. My grip tightened around the phone. What do you want? Another pause. The kind that precedes difficult decisions. I think documents were altered. Every muscle in my body went still. Rain tapped against the hotel windows. Cars passed outside. Yet suddenly all I could hear was her voice. Can you prove it? I asked. No. The answer came immediately. Honest. Not encouraging. Not dramatic. Just honest. But I know where someone might have hidden the originals. The next morning began with a storage facility on the edge of the city. Gray sky. Cold wind. Rows of metal doors. Karen arrived carrying a folder. She looked exactly like someone who had spent years regretting a decision. Nervous eyes. Tired posture. Constantly checking her surroundings. Lily stood beside me. Emily stood on my other side. None of us trusted this situation. Yet nobody wanted to walk away. Karen stopped several feet away. I should have spoken years ago. Nobody responded. Because what exactly do you say to that? She looked at Lily. Tears formed immediately. I remember your mother. Lily stiffened. Karen continued. She never stopped fighting. The words hit like a physical force. I saw Lily's jaw tighten. Saw her eyes begin to shine. For years, people had told her Sarah gave up. Now, another witness stood before her saying the opposite. That mattered. More than evidence. More than paperwork. Sometimes a single sentence can heal something documents never reach. Karen opened her folder. Inside were copies. Notes. Internal memos. Schedules. Court correspondence. Nothing conclusive. Yet together, they painted a disturbing picture. Missing files, last-minute substitutions, unexplained delays. Enough to suggest manipulation. Not enough to prove it. Not yet. Then Karen handed me a key. Small, metal, ordinary, and somehow terrifying. Unit 47. She looked toward the storage buildings. Robert kept things. What things? Her answer came quietly. Insurance. Unit 47 sat near the back of the facility. The lock clicked open. The metal door rolled upward. Dust drifted through sunlight. Boxes filled the room. Hundreds of files. Decades of records. A retired attorney's hidden archive. My pulse pounded. Karen stepped back. I'm not going in. I looked at her. Why? Her expression hardened. Because if those records are here, then I already know what they contain. Fair enough. Inside, Lily stared around the room. So many boxes. I nodded. Too many. The kind of quantity designed to discourage searching. The kind of chaos guilty people rely upon. Hours passed. Dust covered our clothes. Our hands. Our patience. Yet we kept searching. Box after box. File after file. Nothing. Then Emily stopped moving. Daniel. I looked up. She held a folder. Blue. Unremarkable. Thin. My stomach tightened immediately. The dangerous evidence is always hidden in ordinary places. Never dramatic. Never obvious. I walked over, opened the folder, and froze. Inside sat Sarah's final custody petition. The original version. Not the court copy. The original. Attached behind it was something else. A sworn statement. Never filed. Never presented. Never disclosed. A witness affidavit. Signed. Dated. Notarized. I read the first paragraph. Then the second. Then the third. My hands began shaking. Because the witness wasn't a stranger. The witness was Mark's ex-wife. And according to her statement, Mark had deliberately hidden Lily from her mother. For money. For years. Every act of rescue teaches someone they never need to save themselves. For years I tried to solve everything myself. Tried to carry promises. Tried to carry guilt. Tried to carry responsibility. But standing inside that storage unit, surrounded by people finally speaking the truth, I understood something. The truth had never needed me to create it. Only to stop ignoring it. Only to stop looking away. Lily stared at the affidavit. What does it say? I looked at her, then at Emily, then back at the document, and realized the next revelation would change everything. Because Mark hadn't acted alone. There was another name, another signature, another person involved from the beginning. Someone none of us had suspected. Someone much closer than any of us imagined. And when Lily saw the name, the color drained from her face. No, her voice barely existed. No, that's impossible. But it wasn't. And that was the problem. It wasn't impossible at all. No. Lily grabbed the affidavit from my hands. Her eyes raced across the page. Then she read it again and again, as if repetition might somehow change the words. It didn't. The name remained exactly where it had been. Signed beneath the statement. Witnessed. Dated. Legally recorded. Undeniable. Lily's hands trembled. Emily stepped closer. What is it? Lily couldn't answer immediately. The color had drained from her face. Not fear this time. Shock. Pure shock. The kind that arrives when reality collides with everything you've believed for years. Finally, she forced the words out. It's my aunt. Silence filled the storage unit. I looked back at the affidavit. The signature confirmed it. Rebecca Hayes. Sarah Carter's younger sister. Lily's biological aunt. A woman who, according to every story we'd heard, had spent years trying to help. A woman who regularly called on birthdays. Who mailed cards. Who occasionally sent gifts. A woman Lily described as the only relative who seemed to care. And now her name sat on a document alleging she had known about the deception from the beginning. Emily frowned. Maybe we're misunderstanding something. I wanted that to be true. I really did. But the affidavit was painfully clear. Rebecca had learned that Sarah's custody filings were being obstructed. She had confronted Mark. She had threatened to expose him. Then, nothing. No report. No testimony. No public accusation. No action. The statement ended there, like a story with the final chapter ripped away. Lily stared at the paper. She knew. Her voice cracked. All this time, No one answered. Because none of us knew. Not yet. We left the storage facility carrying 3 boxes. Only 3. Yet they felt heavier than everything we'd discovered before. Not because of the paper. Because of the implications. Truth changes shape when it becomes personal. Mark's betrayal was terrible, but expected. Greedy people often behave greedily. An aunt who claimed to care? That was different. That hurt in a different place. During the drive back, nobody spoke much. Rain clouds hung low over the city. Traffic crawled. The silence inside the car felt thick. Eventually, Lily broke it. Maybe she had a reason. Emily looked over. A reason for what? Lily stared out the window. For staying quiet. The words sounded defensive. Protective. I recognized it immediately. She wasn't defending Rebecca. She was defending Hope. Because if Rebecca was lying too, then another safe place disappeared. Another person vanished from the list of people she could trust. I understood why she resisted. Most people do. Nobody wants their final illusion taken away. That afternoon, we arranged a meeting. Rebecca agreed almost immediately. That surprised me. Guilty people usually stall, delay, invent excuses. Rebecca did none of those things. She simply said yes. 2 hours later, we sat inside a quiet cafe near the river. The place wasn't crowded. Only a handful of customers occupied scattered tables. Soft music played overhead. Normal, peaceful, completely disconnected from the storm gathering around us. Rebecca arrived exactly on time. Mid-40s, professional clothing, tired eyes. The moment she saw Lily, her expression softened. Genuine emotion. No hesitation. No performance. She crossed the room, then stopped. Something in Lily's face warned her. What happened? Nobody answered immediately. I placed the affidavit on the table. Rebecca looked down. The color drained from her face. She didn't need to read it. That alone told me enough. She recognized it instantly. Her shoulders lowered. Slowly, like someone setting down a burden they'd carried too long. Oh, the word barely escaped. Oh no. Lily's eyes filled with tears. You knew. Rebecca closed her eyes. Not denying. Not arguing. Not pretending. Just closing her eyes. And in that moment I knew. Whatever happened next, the truth would not be simple. For nearly a minute nobody spoke. Then Rebecca sat down. Carefully. Quietly. Like a person approaching a confession. What did you find this? Today, I said. She nodded. Her gaze remained fixed on the document. I wondered if it still existed. Lily laughed bitterly. That's your response? Rebecca looked up. Pain flashed across her face. Real pain. Not embarrassment. Not fear of exposure. Pain. And somehow that made everything worse. Because it meant she cared. Because people who don't care don't suffer like that. You deserve an explanation. Lily folded her arms. I deserved one years ago. Rebecca flinched. The words landed. Hard. And she accepted them without argument. You're right. Another silence. Then she began. Sarah's illness had progressed faster than anyone expected. The family panicked. Decisions were rushed. Guardianship arrangements were made. Everyone assumed the situation would be temporary, including Rebecca. Then complications appeared. Legal delays. Miscommunications. Sudden obstacles. At first they seemed random. Then patterns emerged. Sarah noticed first. Rebecca noticed second. By then things had already become messy. When we realized what Mark was doing, we tried to stop him. Lily stared. We? Rebecca nodded. Your mother and I. I leaned forward. What exactly was he doing? Rebecca hesitated. Then answered. Using the trust. The same answer again. Money. Always money. Sarah's parents had established a substantial trust fund for Lily. Access required guardianship oversight. Mark gained control, then slowly began redirecting expenses. Not stealing directly. Too smart for that. Instead, he buried transactions inside legal gray areas. Administrative fees, educational costs, housing adjustments, consulting services. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. A slow leak. Years of it. Enough to matter. Not enough to trigger alarms. At least initially. Emily's expression hardened. Sarah found out. Rebecca nodded. Yes. And tried to expose him. Yes. Everything fit. Every piece. Every delay. Every obstacle. Every missing record. The puzzle was finally beginning to reveal its picture. Yet one question remained. The most important one. If you knew all this, Lily whispered. Rebecca looked at her, and for the first time, tears appeared. Why didn't you help me? The question seemed to physically wound her. Because unlike accusations, it couldn't be escaped. It couldn't be argued away. It couldn't be softened. Why didn't you help me? Simple, devastating, necessary. Rebecca lowered her head and answered. I was afraid. Nobody liked the answer, including Rebecca. I could see it. She hated herself, but she kept going. Mark threatened me. Lily's eyes narrowed. With what? My son. The room fell silent. Rebecca swallowed. My son was struggling with addiction. A flash of shame crossed her face. Not because of him, because mothers blame themselves, even when they shouldn't. Mark had evidence. She rubbed her hands together. A nervous habit. He knew things. What things? Emily asked. Things that could have sent my son to prison. The cafe seemed quieter now. Even the music felt distant. Rebecca stared at the table. I told myself I was protecting him. A bitter laugh escaped. Maybe I was. She shook her head. Maybe I was protecting myself. No one interrupted. Some confessions don't need questions. They need space. Years of guilt spilled into the silence. Years of rationalization. Years of self-deception. Eventually, Rebecca looked at Lily. I failed you. Simple. Direct. No excuses. No conditions. No attempt to share blame. Just truth. And somehow that made it harder to hate her. Lily stood suddenly. The chair scraped loudly against the floor. Customers glanced over, then quickly looked away. Nobody wants involvement in another family's pain. She walked toward the window, arms crossed tightly, fighting tears. I let her go. Some battles happen internally. Others can't be helped. For several minutes, she stood there staring at the river. Rebecca quietly cried. Emily remained silent. I watched all three women and thought about consequences. For years, everyone around Mark had compromised, not because they were evil, because they were scared, because fear rarely announces itself dramatically. Most fear arrives disguised as practicality, as caution, as temporary compromise, as survival. One concession, then another, until eventually silence becomes participation, and participation becomes guilt. That realization settled heavily inside me, because it applied to me too. I hadn't hidden Lily. I hadn't stolen from her, but I had stopped searching. Sometimes the hardest thing to do is nothing, and sometimes doing nothing becomes its own kind of action. The confrontation might have ended there. Perhaps it should have, but fate had other plans. Rebecca's phone rang. She glanced at the screen, then immediately looked alarmed. What is it? I asked. She answered quietly. It's him, Mark. The room froze. The phone continued vibrating. Rebecca hesitated, then accepted the call. Speaker mode, just like Lily had. Mark's voice exploded through the device. Where are you? No greeting. No introduction. Just anger. Raw and immediate. Rebecca closed her eyes. Mark, I asked where you are. The cafe grew even quieter. Several nearby customers openly listened now. Nobody pretended otherwise. Rebecca remained calm. Why? A dangerous question. Because guilty people hate questions, especially simple ones. Mark laughed. A harsh sound. You met them. Not question. A statement. He already knew. My pulse quickened. How? Then I realized. Someone was watching. Someone had been watching. The realization chilled me. Mark continued. You should leave. Rebecca stared at the phone. No. Silence. Then, what did you say? I said no. The word seemed to surprise even her. Years of fear. Years of compliance. And suddenly, no. Just one word. Yet it changed everything. Mark's breathing became audible. Heavy. Controlled. Dangerously controlled. Then he made a mistake. The same mistake guilty people always make when pressure cracks them. He threatened too much. You think they can protect you? Nobody spoke. You think they know everything? My attention sharpened. Everything? Interesting choice of words. Not enough. Enough. Meaning there was more. Much more. Mark continued. Voice trembling now. Tell Daniel to stop digging. I felt Emily glance toward me. Or what? Rebecca asked. Another mistake. A bigger one. Mark answered. Or he'll learn who really signed the transfer. The cafe went silent. Even nearby conversations stopped. Rebecca's face went white. Completely white. Lily turned from the window. Confused. What transfer? Nobody answered. Because Rebecca looked horrified. Not surprised. Horrified. The difference mattered. Then Mark realized his mistake. The line disconnected. Gone. Just like that. But too late. Far too late. Rebecca stared at the dark phone screen. Then at Lily. Then at me. And for the first time since we'd met her, I saw genuine terror. Not guilt. Not shame. Terror. Rebecca. My voice sounded sharper than intended. She looked up. What transfer? Her lips parted. No sound emerged. I asked again. What transfer? The answer arrived as a whisper. Barely audible. Yet devastating. The trust wasn't the real target. The room froze. Lily blinked. Emily stared. I felt my stomach drop. Because suddenly every assumption we'd built began cracking. If the trust wasn't the real target, then what was? Rebecca's hands shook violently. And when she finally answered, every person at the table understood the story was much bigger than we imagined. Because according to her, someone had forged documents shortly after Sarah became sick. Documents involving Lily's birth. Documents involving her legal identity. Documents that should never have existed. And if those documents were real, then the question wasn't whether Mark stole money. The question was whether Lily had been stolen at all. Nobody spoke. The cafe seemed frozen around us. Outside, people continued walking along the riverside promenade. Cars moved through intersections. The city carried on as if nothing had changed. Meanwhile, words echoed inside my head. Lily had been stolen. Not hidden. Not neglected. Not manipulated. Stolen. Rebecca sat motionless. The color still absent from her face. Lily stared at her aunt. Waiting. Demanding. Terrified. Explain. The word left Lily's mouth like broken glass. Rebecca swallowed. Then looked around the cafe. We can't discuss this here. No. Lily's voice hardened. We discuss it now. The years of uncertainty finally surfaced. Not as tears. Not as fear. As anger. Raw. Controlled. Long overdue. You don't get to ask for patience anymore. Rebecca closed her eyes. For a moment, I thought she might refuse. Instead, she nodded. Slowly. Defeated. And finally began. 20 years earlier, Sarah Carter had become pregnant. Nothing unusual about that. Nothing suspicious. But the timing created complications. The father had disappeared shortly after learning about the pregnancy. No marriage. No support. No involvement. Sarah never pursued him. Never even spoke publicly about him. Instead, she raised Lily alone. Rebecca paused. Then continued. At least that's what everyone believed. The statement immediately caught my attention. Everyone believed. Not everyone knew. Believed. A subtle difference. An important one. Emily noticed it too. What does that mean? Rebecca stared at her hands. Then answered. It means Lily wasn't supposed to exist publicly. Silence. Absolute silence. The words felt absurd. Impossible. Yet Rebecca wasn't smiling. Wasn't exaggerating. Wasn't seeking attention. She looked like a woman confessing a crime. Lily leaned forward. What are you talking about? Rebecca hesitated, then finally looked directly at her. Your birth records were altered. The room went still. I felt my heartbeat slowing. Not from calm. From shock. The kind of shock that makes reality feel distant. What records? I asked. Hospital records. Rebecca's voice trembled. Registry documents. Another pause. Several legal filings. Emily frowned. What? Rebecca looked at me. Not Lily. Me. And somehow that frightened me more. Because suddenly I understood. Whatever answer came next, it involved me. Sarah didn't tell many people. Rebecca's eyes remained fixed on mine. But she trusted me. My stomach tightened. I already hated where this was going. Trusted you with what? Rebecca inhaled slowly, then said the sentence that shattered the room. She believed you were Lily's father. Everything stopped. Everything. For several seconds, I genuinely thought I'd misheard. Emily froze. Lily froze. Even Rebecca seemed horrified by the words leaving her mouth. I stared at her, unable to process them, unable to connect them to reality. No. The answer emerged automatically. Immediate. Certain. No. Rebecca nodded. I know. That's impossible. I know. My voice rose. I knew Sarah professionally. Yes. We were never involved. I know. The repetition only increased my frustration. Because if she knew all that, why was she saying this? Rebecca opened her purse, then removed a faded envelope. Old, worn, protected, the kind of thing someone carries for years. She placed it on the table. No one touched it. After Sarah died, I found this. The handwriting on the front stopped me cold. Sarah's. I recognized it instantly. The envelope was addressed to Rebecca. Never mailed. Never opened. Until now. Rebecca gently pushed it toward me. Read it. My hands felt strangely heavy. I opened the envelope, removed the letter, and began reading. The first paragraph explained everything. Or at least Sarah's version of everything. 20 years ago, she had attended a corporate training conference. Several young professionals from different companies participated. I remembered it immediately. A week-long event. Long before my marriage. Long before my current life. Long before Lily. The memory felt distant. Almost forgotten. Sarah had been there. I remember that too. Friendly. Smart. Ambitious. We spent time together. Nothing inappropriate. Nothing serious. At least that's how I remembered it. Then I reached the next paragraph, and my chest tightened. According to Sarah's letter, we had become closer than I realized. One night, one mistake, one encounter neither of us discussed afterward. She never contacted me, never asked for support, never demanded anything, never even informed me. Instead, she disappeared from my life completely. Years later, after Lily's birth, she became convinced I was the father. But by then she believed contacting me would create more harm than good. The letter shook in my hands. Not because I believed it immediately, because I didn't know what to believe. Emily sat silently beside me, her face unreadable. That worried me, more than anger would have. Lily stared at me, not as a stranger, not as family, as a person whose entire reality had suddenly become unstable. Is it true? The question barely existed. I looked at her, then at the letter, then back at her. I don't know. The answer hurt, because it was honest, and honesty rarely feels comforting. Rebecca spoke quietly. Sarah intended to request a DNA test. I looked up sharply. What? Before she became sick. Another piece. Another revelation. Another secret. The avalanche continued. Why didn't she? Rebecca's expression darkened. Because the documents disappeared. There was again. Disappeared. Missing. Lost. Always conveniently lost. Every road led back to the same place. Manipulation. Interference. Control. Mark. Or someone connected to him. The pattern had become impossible to ignore. Lily looked exhausted. Emotionally drained. Physically drained. Human beings aren't designed to absorb this much truth at once. None of us are. We left the cafe shortly afterward. Not because the conversation ended. Because nobody could continue. Some truths require room. Space. Air. The four of us returned to the hotel. Separate rooms. Separate thoughts. Separate battles. That evening, I stood alone near the window. The city lights flickered below. Traffic moved through the darkness. Normal life. Ordinary life. A life that suddenly felt very far away. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Emily. I opened the door. She stepped inside. Neither of us spoke immediately. The silence wasn't hostile, just heavy. Eventually, she sat near the window. I remained standing. I don't know what to say. Her honesty almost made me laugh, because I didn't know either. After several moments, she continued. Do you think it's possible? I understood the question immediately. Lily. Fatherhood. The letter. The past. I considered lying. Considered pretending certainty existed. Instead, I told the truth. Yes. Emily nodded slowly. Not surprised. Not upset. Just absorbing reality. I think so too. The admission settled between us. Neither comforting nor destructive. Simply real. After a while, Emily looked toward me. If she's your daughter. Her voice softened. I waited. Then she's been alone far too long. The words nearly broke me. Because that was Emily. Always seeing the person before the problem. Always seeing pain before inconvenience. I sat beside her. And for the first time that day, neither of us spoke about evidence, or documents, or court cases. We spoke about Lily, the teenager, the lonely birthdays, the unanswered questions, the years stolen from her. Because regardless of biology, those things were real. The next morning, everything exploded. Literally, not a physical explosion, a legal one. Karen called at 7:14 a.m. Her voice shook. "You need to see the news." The call ended. I immediately turned on the television. Every major local station carried the same headline: Financial Misconduct Investigation Expands. A photograph appeared. Mark. Another photograph followed. His former law firm. Then another. Several trustees connected to Sarah's family estate. The investigation had gone public. Someone leaked documents. Lots of documents. Enough to trigger official action. Enough to attract media attention. Enough to make hiding impossible. Emily entered the room, saw the screen, and stopped. "That's fast. Too fast." I agreed. Investigations rarely move this quickly, unless someone has been building a case for years. Waiting, preparing, collecting. Then I noticed something else. A familiar face appeared during the report. Robert Gaines, the retired attorney, the owner of Storage Unit 47. Even dead, he was influencing events. Insurance. Karen had called the files insurance. Now I understood why. He had preserved evidence. And someone finally released it. By noon, the courthouse overflowed with reporters. Television vans. Cameras. Journalists. Everyone wanted answers. Nobody had them. Not yet. Lily stayed inside the hotel. Understandably, her entire life was becoming public property. I couldn't blame her. The world treats scandal like entertainment, especially when children suffer. Emily remained with her. I attended the emergency hearing alone. The courtroom was packed. Attorneys filled every available seat. Officials moved constantly. Documents exchanged hands. Evidence circulated. The atmosphere felt electric. Dangerous. Then the doors opened. Mark entered. And for the first time since this began, he looked afraid. Truly afraid. Not irritated. Not defensive. Afraid. The difference was obvious. His confidence had vanished. His posture sagged. His face looked older. Smaller. Human. I watched him take his seat. And something unexpected happened. I didn't feel satisfaction. I thought I would. I thought seeing him cornered might feel rewarding. Instead, I felt tired. Because none of this return lost years. None of it healed Lily. Consequences matter. But they aren't miracles. Truth does not create damage. It reveals where damage already exists. Mark didn't become guilty because evidence appeared. The evidence simply revealed what had always been there. That realization stayed with me as proceedings began. Then came the moment everything changed. An investigator approached the witness stand. He carried a thick folder. Several thick folders, actually. Thousands of pages. Financial records. Communication logs. Bank statements. Legal correspondence. Years of hidden activity. The investigator opened the first file, then spoke. And within 30 seconds, the courtroom erupted. Because the evidence didn't merely prove financial fraud. It proved conspiracy. Multiple participants. Multiple years. Multiple crimes. The judge ordered silence. The reporters practically vibrated with excitement. Meanwhile, Mark stared at the evidence like a man watching his own funeral. And then the investigator revealed the final piece. The piece nobody expected. The forged birth record transfer. The document that never should have existed. The document linking everything together. The document containing the name of the person who authorized it. When the name was read aloud, gasps filled the courtroom. Not because people recognized a criminal. Because they recognized a victim. Someone everyone believed had died innocent. Someone whose role changed everything. And as the courtroom erupted into chaos, I realized the truth was even uglier than we imagined. Because Mark hadn't simply stolen from Lily. He had stolen her identity. And he had done it with help from someone buried deep inside the system. Someone powerful. Someone who had been protecting him for 2 decades. Someone investigators were already moving to arrest. The arrest happened before the hearing ended. I didn't witness it directly. Most of us didn't. One moment investigators were reviewing evidence. The next, courthouse personnel began receiving urgent messages. Phones vibrated. Attorneys exchanged nervous glances. Reporters rushed toward exits. Something significant had happened. Then confirmation arrived. A senior records administrator had been taken into custody. 21 years earlier, she had authorized alterations to several legal identity documents. Not because she benefited financially, because someone paid her. Repeatedly, generously. The paper trail existed. The transfers existed. The evidence existed. And suddenly a conspiracy that had hidden behind bureaucracy for decades began collapsing. One person talked, then another, then another. That's the thing about lies. They look powerful until the first crack appears. After that, they often destroy themselves. I returned to the hotel shortly before sunset. The hallway felt strangely quiet. The world outside had become loud. News broadcasts, social media, public outrage, legal speculation. Yet inside the hotel, everything felt muted, almost peaceful. I found Lily and Emily in the lounge, overlooking the river. Neither noticed me immediately. Lily sat beside the window. A notebook rested on her lap. Emily sat across from her, listening, just listening. No advice, no lectures, no attempts to fix things. And somehow that simple image affected me more than the courtroom had. Because for perhaps the first time in years, Lily looked safe. Not happy, not healed. Safe. There's a difference. A very important difference. She noticed me first. How bad is it? I sat down. Bad. She nodded. Not surprised. Just tired. Then she asked the question I had been expecting. Did they arrest him? I knew who she meant. Mark. The man who had controlled so much of her life. The man whose decisions had shaped years of loneliness. The man who never once apologized. Not yet. A flash of disappointment crossed her face. Then disappeared. Yet, I nodded. Yet, for the first time all day, a faint smile appeared. Not because she wanted revenge, because she wanted certainty. People confuse those two things. They're not the same. Revenge seeks suffering. Certainty seeks truth. Lily had spent most of her life without the second. Later that evening, we received a visitor. Karen. She looked exhausted, relieved, but exhausted. The kind of exhaustion that comes after carrying guilt for too many years. She joined us near the hotel cafe. Coffee arrived. Nobody drank much of it. Eventually, Karen opened a folder and slid it toward me. More documents. More evidence. At this point, I should have been numb. Instead, my stomach tightened immediately. Every new document seemed capable of rewriting reality. What is this? I asked. Karen sighed. The final financial review. Lily leaned forward. Emily remained silent. I opened the folder. The contents confirmed what investigators already suspected. Years of diverted trust funds, shell accounts, false expenses, hidden transfers. Yet one detail caught my attention. Several payments had been made long after Lily turned 18. That made no sense. Guardianship advantages should have ended. Control should have weakened. The transactions continued anyway. I frowned. Karen noticed. What? I tapped a page. Why keep paying people after the objective is achieved? Nobody answered immediately. Then Emily spoke. Because the objective wasn't achieved. The room fell silent. I looked at her. She continued. If they were still paying people. Her voice slowed. Then they were still protecting something. A chill moved through me. Because she was right. Absolutely right. People don't spend money protecting finished secrets. They spend money protecting active ones. Which meant another truth remained hidden. That night, I couldn't sleep. The city lights painted faint patterns across the ceiling. Traffic hummed in the distance. My thoughts refused to settle. The letter. The DNA question. Sarah. Lily. Everything. Around 2 in the morning, my phone vibrated. A message. From Rebecca. Only 6 words. The lab results are ready. I sat upright immediately. My pulse accelerated. For several seconds, I simply stared at the screen. The DNA test. The one investigators expedited after recovering biological samples from preserved medical records. The test that could answer the question none of us had escaped. Was Lily my daughter? I didn't reply. Not because I wasn't interested. Because I wasn't ready. Some truths feel larger than the people receiving them. This was one of them. The meeting happened the next morning. A private office. No reporters. No attorneys. No cameras. Just 4 people. Me, Emily, Lily, Rebecca. The envelope sat in the center of the table. Small. Ordinary. Terrifying. Nobody reached for it. Not immediately. Lily stared at the envelope. Then at me. Then away again. I understood. Because I felt the same thing. Fear. Not of the answer. Of the consequences. If the result was negative, what then? If it was positive, what then? Either way, life changed. Eventually, Rebecca pushed the envelope toward me. You should open it. My hands felt strangely unsteady. I broke the seal. Removed the document. Read the first line. Then the second. Then the conclusion. The room disappeared. For a moment, everything disappeared. Noise. Thought. Movement. Everything. I read again. Just to be sure. Then lowered the paper. Lily watched me carefully, searching my face, searching for clues. I looked at her and nodded. The result confirmed biological parentage. I was her father. Nobody reacted immediately. Movies get this wrong. People imagine dramatic revelations create dramatic responses. Often they don't. Often they create silence. Because reality arrives too large for instant emotion. Lily stared. Rebecca cried first. Quietly, almost silently, years of guilt escaping through tears. Emily reached for Lily's hand. The gesture surprised all of us, including Emily. Yet Lily didn't pull away. That surprised me too. Eventually Lily laughed. One short sound, half disbelief, half sadness, then another, and another, until tears appeared. I spent 4 years searching. Her voice cracked. 4 years. Nobody interrupted. She shook her head. I thought maybe the note was wrong. A tear rolled down her cheek. I thought maybe you wouldn't care. Another. I thought maybe I imagined everything. I wanted to say something. Anything. The right words. The perfect words. Nothing came. Because there are moments when language fails. This was one of them. So instead, I told the truth. I should have found you. The room went quiet. Lily looked at me. I continued. I searched. My voice felt rough. But not long enough. No defense. No excuses. No justification. Just truth. The only thing worth offering. For several seconds, she studied me. Then slowly nodded. As if accepting something. Not forgiveness. Not yet. Just honesty. Sometimes that's the first step. The following weeks brought more hearings. More evidence. More consequences. Mark's world collapsed piece by piece. Not because anyone hunted him. Because the structure supporting his lies finally failed. Former associates cooperated with investigators. Financial records surfaced. Witnesses changed their stories. People who once protected him suddenly protected themselves. The pattern repeated endlessly. Every liar believes loyalty is permanent until accountability arrives. Then loyalty becomes expensive, and expensive things disappear quickly. One afternoon, I attended a hearing where Mark appeared via secure video connection. He looked older, much older, not physically, spiritually, like a man exhausted by carrying his own choices. The prosecutor reviewed evidence. The judge listened. The outcome felt inevitable. Yet I found myself watching Mark's face rather than the proceedings. Trying to understand. Trying to identify the moment everything began. Greed? Fear? Opportunity? Did it matter? Perhaps not. Some questions never receive satisfying answers. Meanwhile, something unexpected happened. Life continued. Not perfectly, not dramatically, simply continued. Lily enrolled in university preparation courses. Emily helped her navigate applications. Karen volunteered information to investigators. Rebecca attended counseling. Small steps, ordinary steps, the kind that rarely appear in headlines. Yet those steps mattered more than court victories. Healing usually looks boring from the outside. That's because healing isn't performance. It's repetition, consistency, presence. One honest day after another. And slowly, almost without noticing, Lily began laughing more often. Not constantly, not magically, just more often. The difference was enough. Several months later, we sat together in a park overlooking the river. The same river visible from the cafe where Rebecca confessed. The same river visible from the hotel lounge. Life has strange ways of creating circles. Autumn leaves drifted across the walking paths. Children played nearby. Dogs chased tennis balls. Normal life. Beautiful life. Lily watched the water, then spoke. Do you know what's strange? I looked over. What? She smiled faintly. I thought finding answers would fix everything. I waited. She continued. It didn't. No. It just gave me different things to work through. I laughed softly. That's usually how answers behave. She considered that, then nodded. Peace begins when winning stops mattering. For years, everyone involved had focused on winning. Winning custody, winning money, winning legal battles, winning arguments, winning narratives. And look where it led. Loss. Everywhere. The moment people stopped trying to win, healing finally had room to begin. That evening, as the sun disappeared behind the city skyline, Lily handed me something. A photograph. Old, worn, familiar. The same photograph she carried into the courthouse. Sarah in the hospital bed, me standing beside her, hope trapped inside a moment. I turned it over. The message remained. If you're lost, find Daniel Brooks. I stared at the handwriting, then at Lily. You should keep this. She shook her head. No. Why? A small smile appeared. Because I found him. And for the first time since this journey began, the photograph no longer felt like a promise. It felt like closure. Almost. Not complete, but close enough to see. Because one final chapter remained. One final meeting. One final conversation with the man who started all of it. And after that, the past would finally have nothing left to say. The final meeting happened on a gray morning. Rain drifted across the city in thin curtains. The sky looked tired. Appropriate, somehow, because I was tired too. Not exhausted, not defeated, simply finished. Finished carrying questions. Finished carrying anger. Finished carrying the weight of a story that had consumed nearly every part of my life. The correctional facility stood on the outskirts of the city. Concrete, steel, security checkpoints. Nothing dramatic. Just a place built to contain consequences. I almost turned around twice before entering. Not because I feared Mark, because I wasn't sure I needed this conversation anymore. That realization surprised me. Months earlier, I would have demanded answers, demanded explanations, demanded accountability. Now I wasn't certain. The truth had already arrived. Lily was safe. The legal process was moving forward. Life was rebuilding itself. What remained? Perhaps only curiosity, or perhaps closure. Sometimes the difference is difficult to see. The visitation room was quiet. A guard escorted Mark inside several minutes later. For a moment, I barely recognized him. Not because prison had transformed him, because the version of him I remembered had always appeared larger. More confident, more imposing. Fear does that. It enlarges people. Distance does too. Now he looked ordinary. Just a man. A flawed man. A tired man. A man sitting alone across a metal table. Nothing more. Nothing less. He sat down, looked at me, then laughed softly. No humor in it. Only resignation. I wondered if you'd come. I remained silent. Mark nodded. As expected, the rain tapped gently against reinforced windows. The room smelled faintly of disinfectant. Neither of us seemed eager to begin. Finally, he leaned back. How is she? I studied him carefully. The question sounded genuine. That bothered me more than if it had sounded fake. Because genuine concern complicated things. Life will be simpler if villains were monsters. Most aren't. Most are people who make terrible decisions while convincing themselves they have reasons. Lily is doing well. His eyes closed briefly. Relief. Real relief. Interesting. Very interesting. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then I asked the question that mattered most. Why? Simple. Direct. The same question Lily asked Rebecca. The same question I had asked myself countless times. Why? Mark stared at the table. Not avoiding. Thinking. Remembering. Eventually he answered. It wasn't supposed to become this. The response irritated me immediately. Not because it was false. Because it was familiar. Every disaster begins with intentions that supposedly weren't supposed to become disasters. Explain. He exhaled slowly. Then began. At first, the trust fund really had been the focus. Money, security, opportunity, the usual excuses. He convinced himself he was borrowing, then managing, then protecting, then entitled. Each justification slightly worse than the last. Each one easier to believe. Until eventually the distinction between stewardship and theft disappeared. I listened quietly, not because I sympathized, because understanding matters, even when forgiveness doesn't. Then Mark said something unexpected. Sarah figured it out too quickly. I frowned. What? She was smarter than I expected. The statement carried no bitterness, only honesty. Sarah discovered irregularities, started asking questions, started gathering records, started threatening legal action. And suddenly Mark faced a choice. Confess or escalate. He chose escalation. The rest followed. One compromise creating another. One lie requiring 3 more. One crime demanding 5 additional crimes for protection. A chain reaction. Years long. Devastating. Predictable. And Lily. The question emerged before I could stop it. Mark looked away. For the first time, genuine shame appeared. Not fear. Not self-pity. Shame. I told myself she was fine. The answer landed heavily. Because I believed him. Not that she was fine. That he told himself she was. People rarely survive decades of wrongdoing without constructing stories. Stories that make them heroes. Stories that make them victims. Stories that make consequences feel unfair. Mark built one too. A story where he wasn't stealing a childhood, only protecting circumstances. A story where neglect wasn't neglect, just limitation. A story where isolation wasn't isolation, just practicality. The human mind is capable of remarkable dishonesty, especially toward itself. You knew she was searching. His silence confirmed it. You knew she found the photograph. Another silence. You knew she was looking for me. This time he nodded. Slowly. The admission settled heavily between us. I expected anger. Instead, I felt something else. Sadness. Not for Mark. For Lily. Because every unanswered question, every dead end, every frustrating year hadn't been random. Someone had watched. Someone had known. Someone had chosen silence. That truth hurt more than any financial crime. Eventually, Mark looked directly at me. Do you hate me? The question surprised me. Perhaps because it sounded sincere. Perhaps because it sounded childish. I considered it carefully, then answered honestly. No. His expression changed. Confusion. Disbelief. Maybe disappointment. I continued. I did. Another pause. Not anymore. The rain continued outside. Steady. Patient. Mark stared at me. Why? I looked toward the window. Thinking. Searching for the correct words. Eventually I found them. Because hating you doesn't help, Lily. The room went quiet. Nothing I feel changes what happened. Mark lowered his eyes. And nothing I say changes it either. No. His laugh returned. Soft. Broken. Honest. No, I suppose not. For several minutes, we simply sat there. 2 men connected by choices neither could undo. One through action. One through absence. Both carrying consequences. Different consequences. But consequences all the same. When the meeting ended, Mark stood first. The guard approached. Time was up. He stopped before leaving, then turned back toward me. There was one thing I never understood. I waited. Why keep searching? The question surprised me. Not because it was difficult. Because it was simple. Very simple. I thought about Sarah. The hospital room. The promise. The photograph. The courthouse. Lily. Everything. Then answered. Because someone mattered. Mark stared at me. I continued. That's all. No speech. No lesson. No dramatic declaration. Just truth. Someone mattered. Sometimes that is enough. The guard led him away. The door closed. And just like that, the chapter ended. Outside, the rain had stopped. Clouds broke apart above the city. Sunlight appeared in narrow bands. The world looked cleaner somehow. Not transformed. Just clearer. I drove home without turning on the radio. Without making phone calls. Without thinking about legal cases. For the first time in months, silence felt comfortable. Not empty. Comfortable. There's a difference. By the time I arrived, Lily and Emily were in the garden. They didn't notice me immediately. Both were kneeling beside newly planted flowers. arguing about gardening techniques, neither willing to admit the other might be right. I smiled before I realized it. The scene felt ordinary, wonderfully ordinary. And after everything we'd survived, ordinary felt like a gift. Life did not become perfect. Stories that claim otherwise are lying. Healing isn't perfection. Healing is adaptation. There were difficult days, unexpected triggers, old memories, complicated emotions, questions without answers. There always would be, but there were good days too, more of them over time. Lily started university, not because she suddenly became fearless, because she stopped waiting to become fearless. An important distinction. Rebecca remained part of her life. Carefully, patiently, trust rebuilt itself one honest action at a time. Karen testified, completed her cooperation agreement, then quietly disappeared from public attention. Exactly where she wanted to be. Emily continued being exactly who she had always been, the steady center of every storm. The person who understood that presence matters more than speeches. And me? I learned something unexpected. For years, I believed my greatest failure was stopping the search. I was wrong. My greatest failure was believing one failure defined me forever. It didn't. People make mistakes. Terrible mistakes. Life-changing mistakes. The question is not whether mistakes occur. The question is what happens next. Do we remain trapped inside them, or do we build something better from what remains? 2 years after the courthouse incident, Lily invited us to a small gathering. Nothing formal, nothing elaborate, just friends, family, people who mattered. The event took place in a community center overlooking the river, the same river that had witnessed so much of this story. Apparently, life enjoys symmetry. Near the end of the evening, Lily stood to speak. She hated public speaking. Everyone knew it, which made the effort matter even more. She looked nervous, determined, human. After thanking several people, her eyes found mine. Then Emily's. A smile appeared, small but genuine. When I was younger, she said, I spent years asking why nobody came. The room grew quiet. I thought the answer would define my life. She paused, looking out across the crowd. It didn't. Another pause. The people who stayed defined my life. Emotion tightened my throat. Around the room, several others looked affected too. Lily continued, family isn't always the people who begin the story. Her gaze shifted toward Emily, then Rebecca, then back to me. Sometimes they're the people who help finish it. No one spoke for several seconds after she finished. Some moments deserve silence. This was one of them. Later that night, we walked beside the river. The city lights reflected across the water. The air felt cool, comfortable, peaceful. Lily carried the old photograph again, the one from the hospital, the one that started everything. She stopped near the railing, looked at it for a long moment, then carefully placed it back into her bag. Not discarded, not hidden, simply stored, where memories belong, neither worshipped nor erased, just carried. Finally, she looked at me. You know something? What? She smiled, the smile of someone no longer searching. I almost didn't go to the courthouse that day. I laughed softly. I know. No. She shook her head. You don't. Curious, I waited. She leaned against the railing. I stood outside for nearly an hour. That surprised me. Why? Her answer came quietly. Because some truths don't need volume. I was afraid you wouldn't want me there. The words settled heavily between us. Then she smiled again, a little stronger this time. But I went anyway. I looked out across the water, thinking about fear, thinking about courage. People often imagine courage means feeling brave. It doesn't. Courage is walking forward while fear comes with you. Lily understood that now, better than most adults ever would. We stood there together, watching the river flow beneath the lights, past and present moving beside each other, neither winning, neither disappearing, simply continuing. A philosophical truth came to me then, one that fit our story better than anything else. The past does not release us when we defeat it. The past releases us when we stop letting it decide who we become. Lily eventually slipped her arm through mine. A simple gesture, natural, unforced. The gesture of a daughter who no longer needed proof, and a father who no longer needed redemption. Ahead of us, the city glowed, alive with possibilities. Behind us, Years of secrets finally rested. Not forgotten. Resolved. The river kept moving. So did we. And this time, there was no one left to search for.